Hi, my name is Sorcha. I'm a nutritionist and healthy lifestyle blogger, and in this video, I'm going to talk about what it's my experience with is living with adrenal insufficiency, or what's also known as Addison's disease. So I have multiple medical conditions, and I've already made a few videos about some of them. So intestinal failure and diabetes. So this is number 3, Addison's disease, and let's get started with the video. So first I'm going to explain what adrenal insufficiency or Addison's disease, same thing, is. But there's 3 types. There's primary, secondary and tertiary, and I have the primary one, adrenal insufficiency, and that's known as Addison's disease. And that is when my adrenal glands, which are little things at the top of your kidneys, they basically don't work. They don't produce the hormones that they're supposed to. Mainly the hormone cortisol, which is the stress hormone. It's the hormone your body releases when you are stressed. And then there's the second one, which is aldosterone. I can never say that right. It kind of maintains or balances your potassium and your sodium in your body. Now, generally, you don't necessarily maybe not produce both of these hormones, but for me, I happen to not produce either of them. So I take medication for that to replace them. And it's a very rare disease. There's only one in 100,000 in people in Ireland with it, and then worldwide I think it's about like 100 to 140 people per every million people. So as a statistic wise, that's like it's not a lot. It's quite rare, which means that unfortunately a lot of people have it and they're getting misdiagnosed, because if you don't take the medication for it, you feel really bad, and it's very dangerous because you can die. But the cortisol, like the hormone cortisol, it controls your blood pressure, blood glucose levels, it maintains metabolism, so it's really important. And then obviously, like I said, the other hormone, that one that I can't say, the aldosterone, it maintains your sodium and potassium levels, which are really important because they control like how your muscles go. So I don't want to get too much into the whole biology of it, but basically having Addison's disease and not having the proper treatment for it will make you feel terrible and can result in you becoming extremely, extremely ill. Thankfully, my diagnosis of Addison's disease was pretty straightforward, to the point where I don't actually remember being diagnosed with it. I know that I was around 9-10 when I was diagnosed, but because I was already kind of in the hospital system, my doctors I had like multiple consultants looking after multiple parts of me. They were keeping a really close eye on me for any little changes in my bloods and my like health in any way, and also my parents as well. It was caught pretty quick, so I was put on the treatment, the medication, pretty quick. The main symptoms of Addison's disease would be fatigue, and then just it's hard to explain because it's like your limbs are made of lead. You're so tired, like you literally cannot move. So it's not just a tired, like you haven't slept and had a good night's sleep. It's proper tiredness. I was already such a sick child at the time that I probably just didn't realize there was any difference, if you know what I mean. So to me, Addison's disease, being diagnosed with it, isn't something that sticks out in my brain. Being diagnosed with diabetes is probably the first thing that proper stuck in my head, because it made my life had to change so much because of it. But with Addison's disease, not really. Now, I was diagnosed with diabetes like pretty close with the Addison's, which kind of made things a bit tricky. because, like I said, cortisol, which is the hormone I don't produce, it helps maintain blood sugar levels. And obviously, the thing about diabetes is you aren't in control of your blood sugar levels. You're taking not artificial insulin, like you're taking insulin that's not being produced by your body. It's hard to regulate the blood sugars without having something like Addison's. So with something like Addison's, it can be very tricky. Some examples of that would be when I become ill, or if I become very stressed, I find that my blood sugar levels just plummet. And no matter how much glucose I could take, there's been times I've took up to 60 grams of glucose in one sitting and they're still not coming up. And it probably has a little bit to do with my inability to absorb things properly as well. But the Addison's, because I don't make the cortisol, if I don't take extra steroids at that time, that my blood sugars, I can't get them up, they won't stay up. And I find sometimes randomly, really inconvenient times as well, I start having days where my blood sugars they keep dropping. I could basically have turned my insulin off, which I'm not supposed to do, but like basically taking barely any insulin and eating loads of food and they won't stay up. And sometimes I do know, I'm like, well, it's exams are coming up or there's something coming up and I'm like, well, this event or this thing must be stressing me out, or something has happened, or like I'm ill. And then other times I'm just like, but there's nothing happening in my life right now that is making me any more stressed than what I usually am. So that can be annoying, but having Addison's is rare, like I said, and having Addison's and type 1 diabetes together is extremely rare, and it's probably extremely rare because it's a pain in the arse having them both together. So they just do not interact well together. It's like a balancing act between them, because also, and on the other side of it, I'm talking about low blood sugars, but the medication, the steroids that you take for Addison's disease, they make their blood sugars rise. So when I'm sick, I have to take extra steroids to help me get better. But also when I'm sick, my blood sugars rise. And because I also need to take the extra steroids, that means that the blood sugars are up and they won't come down because the steroids are keeping them up there. And I said, also, my blood sugars can go low when I'm not well as well. So it's really complicated and it makes my head hurt sometimes thinking about it. Day by day, how Addison's affects me, in general, I just wouldn't have as much energy as other people. Now, you might look at all the stuff that I do and think, well, you do more than me. That's pure sheer stubbornness that gets me through the day at times. And a lot of it is just, if you saw at the end of the day when I've done everything, I was just like, so that's why. And another thing when I know there's a lot on in the day, I like to just keep going, because I know that once I sit down or like relax or whatever, it's going to be so hard for me to get up again. And that's something, I don't try to do that very often, because it's obviously not good to push your body to that limit. But when you want to keep up with other people, I just feel like, I can do it. I just won't be able to do anything the next day, but as long as there's nothing happening the next day, and it also depends what it is. So there has been times I've been quite silly and just kind of overdone it, but I'm getting better at not doing that. now, especially living away at UCD at college, because basically there's something happening nearly every day, whether it's class or dance society thing or something event I want to go to. So I really have to learn to like prioritize and know that I'm not able to do as many things on the one go as other people, but that doesn't mean I can't do them. I just have to spread them out more. So that's the thing. The the whole thing, I find that emotionally, my Addison's is linked to my emotions. It sounds really weird, but I mean, my Addison's can be triggered. And when I say triggered, when your Addison is triggered, it means you just get really tired all of a sudden because your body isn't making the hormones that normally would deal with this excitement or sadness or stress or all those. I know stress isn't really, maybe it is an emotion, make it an emotion for this video, but all those emotions, my body doesn't make the hormone to deal with that. So when I am extremely excited or really happy or really sad or like if someone close to me has passed away, I'm grieving or I'm really stressed, I just, my body just like deflates, like, and if I don't take the medication and the steroids to kind of prop me back up again, I could get very ill. Thankfully, I've never taken a really bad Addison's attack, what they call it. I've always been able to take oral medication and help myself out. Now, obviously, there have been times where I've been in hospital and certain things have happened that I've needed IV steroids, but that's kind of different. That's kind of was more almost preventative kind of measures. And yeah, so it's a bit annoying because yeah, for the not so good emotions where you're sad and stuff, you obviously don't want to be sad, but then things like how do you help yourself from getting excited about something? Or like I took an Addison attack after an Ed Sheeran concert once, which is and now every time I go to a concert, I have to increase my steroids for that concert. It was the next day that it like kind of hit me almost. I got up the next morning and I was extremely tired, and we were walking to the bus, and I just felt I knew it wasn't my diabetes. I knew I wasn't taking a hypo because it wasn't the same feeling. It just felt like all of a sudden everything was getting heavy, like there was being weights putting on my arms and my legs, and it was quite scary to be honest because the only thing we could do was give me the extra steroids, and they don't work straight away. Like they take a while to work. I mean, I had a 4 hour bus journey then home, and even by the time I got home, I still just wasn't right. And that was because Ed Sheeran was so amazing. He obviously made me so excited that he put me in Addison's attack. And then other concerts that I've been to after that, I took extra steroids then, so that was a lesson learned. I tend to take extra steroids also if I'm doing any performances on stage because you hear that adrenaline rush. Well, I don't get that adrenaline rush, and it's not like I need it, but I also don't like I need that hormone so I can get on stage and perform and not just in the middle of the stage. Um, and also it will stop my blood sugars from dropping on stage, which wouldn't be good. And the excitement of that as well, it's to deal with the excitement of performing, the nerves, like, because everyone gets a little bit nervous of performing. I would take extra steroids before my exams, or even not even just that day, probably like a little bit, tiny bit extra that week coming up to the exams, where you're studying and that. So those would be the times for me. And then obviously if I become unwell or if I'm in hospital, or if you watch my video of my second semester GCD, I caught the flu and I ended up in hospital and I had to go on extra IV steroids, which is like a lot. So those would be the times that I would increase my steroids, Addison's, and that's how it affects me on a daily basis. I just have to be a lot more aware of what I'm going to be doing that day, how much energy it's going to take, and oh, well, can I do it? Normally I tell myself yes, even if really I'm like, well, it's going to be a stretch, but can I do it? And then what's happening the next day, because if it's a lot happening that day, the likelihood that I'm going to have energy to do a lot the next day maybe isn't there. So prioritize, organize, and be realistic. Now just some of my main tips for managing Addison's disease, things that I use. Obviously the first one is to be realistic. Like if you're unrealistic about what you can do, or even if you aren't quite sure, yes, push your limits, see what your limits are. You're going to hit, like I call it hitting the wall, a few times before you realize, right, there's a wall there. Now, sometimes you can push past that wall. You can figure out different ways to do things that work for you, but sometimes that wall is there and you're just going to have to kind of pull back a bit. There's going to be times where you hit the wall where you didn't mean to. Maybe you're doing something that you normally are okay doing and one day you just push a bit too far, and that's fine. It's a learning process really. So that's the first one, being realistic. Getting enough sleep. Like for anybody, even if you don't have Addison's, you should really be getting enough sleep. Sleep is seriously underrated in health. People, for me, I know studying like for exams and all, I hear about people cramming the night before up to like 3 or 4 in the morning and having like an hour of sleep and going to the exam. I could not do that. Like the night before the exam, I go to bed really early. I try to get to sleep really early. I have like a whole relaxation kind of thing beforehand. I don't study. I don't go near any books. I might study a little bit that morning when I get up, but I try my best to get a good night's sleep before. Doesn't always work out, but that's what I try. And also with Addison's, I feel like if I don't get a good night's sleep, like for the rest of the day, no matter how much steroids I'm taking, I feel so tired. So Addison's and sleep is, yeah, you need to get sleep. And then another one is a stress reliever. So I talked about how stress triggers my Addison's, and I'm sure it probably is something that triggers other people's Addison's as well. And for me, I find that having a stress reliever is really important. And when I say stress reliever, like I do things like yoga and stuff like that, but that's not always going to work. Something simple, because if you think about it, if you're not feeling well, which you normally don't, if you're having issues with your Addison's, you normally just don't have any energy. You need a stress reliever, which you can basically just lie and be still. For me, it's listening to music and most recently audiobooks. Audiobooks, I tend to pick books that I've already read because they make me fall asleep. So I wake up and I'm like 5 chapters in and I'm like, what has happened? And then I have to like rewind it back. So it takes me so long to listen to the full audiobook because I have to keep rewinding it back. But obviously somebody telling me a story, it helps me relax. So music, audiobook, meditation, you can listen to meditation. I tried it. I mean, it did. There's ones that can help you go to sleep. They're good, but I prefer to listen to music or audiobooks. And the final one, and is really important also, is rest periods. I am so bad at this. Like I mentioned before, when I have a full day, I just like to keep going to the end, because then I drop at the end of the day. But if you can have rest periods, take them. So in days that I have maybe 2 classes, and then there's time in between, I need to think, right, how do I feel today? Do I feel energetic? What do I have on this evening? If I have nothing on that evening, then I'll take that middle part to maybe study or get stuff done. But if I have maybe something on later on that evening, like a dance workshop or something event I'd like to go to, then I'll take that middle of the day part to rest, and that whether that means having a nap. I normally don't take naps in the middle of the day, but whatever suits you, having a nap or watching some Netflix or listening to music or reading a book, something that you can relax and rest, that really helps. Also, if you are one of those lucky people who can just like fall asleep anywhere, take naps. I can't. I take like half an hour to even, or maybe longer, to fall asleep, and I have to be in like the perfect like area. Like I have to have everything set up properly. It's so hard. But that's my main thing. So you've got rest periods, be realistic, have a stress reliever, and like obviously the other things, like if you need extra steroids, take them. Obviously talk to your doctor about it. I mean, my doctor has told me how much that I can increase it and by how much and for how long, so you need to talk to your doctor about that. And those are the main things really, and if you do that, then Addison's really shouldn't affect your life that much, really. You can lead a perfectly normal life. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and please share it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to know a bit more about my condition, I'm basically running through all of the list of chronic medical autoimmune conditions that I have under the umbrella of my main diagnosis. And so far, this is the third video. So I've done intestinal failure, I've done type 1 diabetes, and this is Addison's. So these are my top main 3 conditions that basically I'm just gonna like cause me the most bother. The other ones are pretty like, they're just sitting there quiet, they're not really doing much most of the time. So those are my main 3. So the rest of the videos will probably be like a lot shorter because there's not like a lot, or I might even just combine them together. And yeah, so that's what I'll do. But if you like this video, then please go and watch the other videos. And also, if you'd like to know how I basically managed to leave home and go to UCD in Dublin for a year with all of this going on, please watch my videos. There's 2, there's part 1 and part 2.